someone with not a good self-image or self-confidence in oneself can become very depressed listening to a choir that's larger than the average attendance at his church. Around here. Very nice. I told everybody back at Trinity in Chicago that I was going to Nebraska for a revival. I'd like to take a picture of you all and see the crowds that I drew here. They'll have a little more confidence when I bring up programming ideas. Over here you can raise your hands like you're saying hallelujah or something. Yeah, up high. You good? Very good. Spirit moved among the choir. Well, if this side could start clapping a little bit. Tell them that was right after the sermon. See, no problem here. I'm bringing some extra materials today. Reverend Gall said I had more than 12 to 15 minutes, which I usually preach. I try to average size at Trinity is about 80 people, and I preach 12 minutes there. And it's summertime, I only preach about 6 minutes when there's 40. Shoot, I got a couple hours here. Looking forward to this opportunity. See if I have everything in place. Run out of things to say. I've got a newspaper to read from. Reverend Golf called me a couple of weeks ago, and there's a real sense of excitement and anticipation when he called me. I don't receive a phone call from him that often, and I know something's brewing when he does call. And he knew that I was coming in town, and as we talked about how things were going to Trinity back in Chicago, I was figuring he'd ask me to do a pastoral prayer this morning. It would have been much shorter. Or give a short update on how I was doing in ministry at Trinity. But this not being a low Sunday, the Sunday after Christmas, Sunday after Easter, or Labor Day Sunday, I never expected an invitation to preach. In fact, this is a very high Sunday as you celebrate your 20th anniversary, bicentennial of Methodism, kind of fall kickoff for the 84-85 year. So when he asked me to preach, I was very much enthused. I asked you to think, especially all the children, think of the last phone call you received. The last time somebody called you up on the phone. Can you place that in your mind maybe earlier today, earlier this week? What kind of feelings did you have? Were you excited and have a sense of anticipation when you heard the person talk, or was it someone you don't really want to talk to that much at all? You kind of dreaded the phone call? Yeah. There's a variety of ways we respond to the calls that we receive in life. And I obviously responded with an enthusiastic, yes, I'll preach. A year's worth of congregation right here. I was excited to come home for a couple of reasons. I missed my 10-year reunion at Burke this summer because I had a prior obligation, and being able to come back in this setting is truly fulfilling for me. Chicago is home. Because I'm starting my 7th year there, between school and church. And it's been my entire adult life really in Chicago, and that's the city that I identify as home. But it's unique coming home. Those of you that have been transplanted into Omaha know what it means to really go home. This is a very mobile congregation. How many persons here have been in Omaha less than 10 years? Raise your hands. Okay. How many less than 5? A good number. You can identify with what I'm saying when you go to the home that you're born and raised in. The streets are familiar, the layout of the city, you know, even though it might have changed and grown a little bit. A lot of people, friends and family, that are empathetic to you because of their common thought patterns that you had as you were growing up in life. The people of Trinity back in Chicago have really not caught on yet during my pastoral prayer in the fall. Last fall, I start off each pastoral prayer with 5 minutes of thanksgiving to God for the bountiful harvest of points that He had bestowed to the Cornhuskers the day before. They didn't truly understand the Sunday after New Year's when we had a service of quiet prayer and lamentation, that unique feeling of being a Cornhusker and being home is nice. They'll be able to understand it more. Dad and I got to go to a football game yesterday, and we'll have more prayers like that, so they'll catch on sooner or later. It's nice to be home because you have a sense of renewing those primal feelings of belonging. It's important to have a sense of belonging. It prepares us to venture forth in life in a variety of ways. I remember the first time that I left home is just over 10 years ago, the week before Labor Day. Went to Drake University in Des Moines. Was hoping my roommate would be there, but as I arrived, he wasn't there, and Mom and Dad took me up. Went to the freshman dormitory, opened up the door. There was one bed on the left, shelves above it, bed over here on the other side, closet that was 6 foot long for all our clothes, for both of us, little desks on each side, and a window that had a balcony that looked out. And Mom and Dad and I, we walked around the campus, went out to eat, went through shops, and they finally had to go home. And later my roommate came, who I'd never met before. And it was reassuring. I had a sense of belonging already because he was going to be on the track team like me. He was from Kansas City, so kind of a familiar city. He was going to study to be a minister, so we had a lot of things in common. But he had a car, and he went home that very first weekend. And I was left alone on a campus, really not knowing anyone, being rather shy. But I knew I'd do okay. And I'm sure my parents, as they went home, they had a sense that I would survive. They probably went home that Labor Day weekend thinking of me being alone really for the first time. And I went out on the porch and were reflecting upon my infancy, probably my first year, and how I'd done all right. I'd negotiated everything that I needed to in life thus far. Although they probably didn't use these terms, they probably were concurring with Dr. Eric Erickson, the psychoanalyst, who said the first year of life, when we go through the oral phase of our psychosexual development, we have to successfully negotiate the task of psychosocial task of feeling that we belong, feeling that we have a basic trust in this life. Because Mom and Dad and my big brother Steve, they were there when I was a small infant, giving me the things that I needed when I was unable to provide for myself. I successfully negotiated that task because I knew I could have a basic trust in this life that people were there when I needed them. And that went on through life in any situation I was, even on a college campus in Des Moines, all by myself. And as it turned out, a friend from high school who was older called me up and invited me over, and I basically spent the weekend with he and his friends and enjoyed the time together. It's important, it's probably essential that we have a sense of belonging in life if we're going to have a sense of abundance and fullness in our life. The church historically has served that purpose as an institution, as a social agent, of making people feel like they belong. But we're fortunate. We're in communities that offer a variety of opportunities in which we can have an authentic sense of belonging to something. This newspaper here is the Oak Leaves. It's from the Oak Park area across the street from where I am in Chicago. And it gives an example of that. If you're a senior, there are a variety of opportunities. There's a card playing group that meets every afternoon. If you like to travel, there's a travel group. If you have special needs, there's the Suburban Adult Day Center for social and recreational value. If you are a ham, there's a senior stagers, a musical performing group. And if you have special needs, there's Biracial Family Network West. There's a stepping stone for single mothers that are separated, divorced, or early widowed. There's the Oak Park River Forest Newcomers Club that acquaint people with the area. There's special directions, a support group for parents with special needs. If you have special interests, there's a cycling club, a runners club, a literary club. There's a variety of things within our own local communities that Omaha has, as well as any other community, that provide for those sense of belonging. What has evolved in community organizations is that we can feel a part of something, and they've taken over the social aspect that the church served for many years. In the 200 years of Methodism, many times the church was the center of the community for religious purposes as well as social purposes. But as this social dimension has weaned out through community organizations, which is very good, we are faced with the question, what is the uniqueness of belonging to a local congregation? And tied in with that, what are we called to as we belong to a local congregation? I ask you to recall the Old Testament lesson that Dale read for us earlier about Abraham and Sarah. Long before churches were in existence, but they had a sense of what it was as unique quality of being in a community of faith. There was a sense of covenant, a relationship between ourselves and God. The covenant demands faith. Here at St. Luke, each and every one of you are in a covenant with God. All the children, all the adults, through your baptismal rite or through your membership vows, you have a covenant, a relationship with God. The same is true for the people that I serve at Trinity in Chicago. And our covenants demand faith. Look at the faith that was required of Abraham and Sarah. God said to Abraham, "Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. I will make a nation of you, and the kings shall come forth from you." Now, if you put that in its context, they had to have a lot of faith to believe it. Abraham and Sarah were in their 90s when they heard this. They had no children whatsoever. To have faith in the fact that they're even going to have children, much less have kings and nations come from them, demanded a lot of faith. We remember Sarah, she was sitting in the tent when God sent messengers to Abraham to tell him he was going to have a son. And Sarah just laughed at the thought of that happening to her in her 90s. But it was through their faith that they finally fulfilled the dream that God had for them. The demands of faith that we have in our life kind of pale in comparison. Here at Trinity, you have to have faith that God's blessing is upon a worship center that's going to cost over $500,000. Even in a congregation this large, in an area this affluent, that's a lot of money. And a lot of faith has to go into even starting off a project that God's blessings can work through that setting in a unique way. Back at Trinity, the people are having to have faith. For the last 20 years, they've dwindled as a congregation. They've gone from a large congregation such as St. Luke to a congregation less than 200 people that have 60, 70, 80 people show up on a Sunday morning. When they hear me, they brought a young minister in to bring a little life to the community. And when they hear me talk about growth after they've seen decline for 2 decades, they have to have a lot of faith to see that that might be a possibility. As a denomination, this year at our general conference back in Baltimore, there's a resolution set forth that we, as a denomination, double in size in the next 8 years. We've dwindled from 10 million to about 9 million in the last 10 years. For the next 8 years, they want to double it from 9 million to 18 million. It takes a lot of faith to have that sort of thing happen within our midst. But it came from the Asian caucus of the United Methodist Church that sees this type of growth happening within their midst, and they know that it can happen for all. Belonging to a local congregation is being in covenant with God and having the faith that God is working in our midst for good. The uniqueness of belonging to a local congregation and having a sense of call can be seen in the words of Paul. Paul talked about the people of a congregation being unique. He talked to the Corinthians in this way: "You are a letter of recommendation, written on your hearts, And all people will know you are persons of faith by your hearts. You show that you are a letter from Christ, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God upon your lives. The persons of Corinth had this sense of faith within them. We in a local congregation, be it here at St. Luke or in Trinity back home, have a uniqueness because we responded to a call. Abraham and Sarah responded to a call to go from the familiar in life to the unfamiliar. They were very successful persons back in Hebron. When they had to make the move, they had to take all their workers, all their cattle, they had to move to a new place. They had to go from the familiar, the comfortable, to the unfamiliar and the uncomfortable. Paul noted, as he talked to the Corinthians, part of the call. It says, "For as we have abundantly shared in Christ's suffering, so we will share in Christ's comfort." Trinity, as a local congregation, is learning what that is about back home as I bring forth ideas that I experienced here in this local congregation. One thing that I told them was a reason that they are not growing is that they are closed and isolated from their community, that they have to open up to the community and service its needs. So we've spent a year just doing a survey of the community, trying to figure out what the needs are in our surrounding areas. And one of the things is we found that the children and the youth need to be ministered to in a unique way. And we've opened up an after-school program to tutor children from the Chicago public school system that don't have a whole lot of chance within that system because there are so many numbers and inadequate resources. And just this summer, we opened up a teen center. And we're in a very unique area. We're in a little section of Chicago that is all white, all Italian Catholic. Across the street, we have Oak Park, which is a model of integration between black and white families. Then, one block to the south is Cicero, which is as white and backward-minded as one might have in social thinking. And in this teen center, we've invited persons from all the community to come. 4 weeks ago, the vision that we had started to come to life as we had the kids there and they were breakdancing. Do any of the kids here breakdance? Any breakers here? Okay. Well, when we're eating the pig, you can show some of the breaking. Okay? But we had the kids from the island, which is a little part of Chicago I'm from, that were there. Then some of the kids from Oak Park who happened to be black came over. They had probably never intermingled before in their lives. But the dancing brought them together in a unique way. And the vision started to live that we can have relationships in new ways with people in the communities next to us. Then we had a few evenings where we had just had drop-in centers. And then this last Friday evening, some youth came over from Cicero. And Cicero, for the youth, one of their big options in life is to be part of gangs. Gangs are very large in that area, a big influence on the youth. So some of the gangs were there, some of the kids from the island were there, some of the kids from Oak Park were there. The vision was coming true, feeling so excited about that. And then went downstairs out the back door, and the gangs left one of their trademarks, which they're noted for, sprayed graffiti all over the back of the church. And the church is starting to understand in an initial phase what it means to suffer a little bit for our vision of what it is to be within a Christian community and lift that up to the communities round about us. And we're going to be struggling over the next year with how we open up and reach out and sustain ourselves even when we have a sense of suffering. Here at St. Luke's, as you noted in the pastoral prayer, the 20 years have not been the easiest years of all time. There have been some good times, but there have been some struggles as well. And Paul told us that in his speaking to the Corinthians, that it's true in any congregation of faith, that we are called, we respond to the call, but there are struggles along the way. Being part of a local congregation is belonging in more. It is belonging to a covenant community that has a relationship with God. It is belonging to a community that is part of a unique set of people that have responded to God in faith. There's belonging in more. It is observing how God works within the midst of a local congregation. And there are times of looking at that, all the struggles that you've gone through, then being able to celebrate how we've successfully negotiated those difficulties. And we celebrate those things on anniversaries of local congregations, on anniversaries of local denominations, at times when we look at new challenges, such as a worship center, saying that that's not going to be the easiest thing to accomplish financially, but we've done a lot of other things in the past 20 years, and God will work through us in that as well. Being part of the local congregation is belonging in more. And I think this is the most important part. That as we depart from the local congregation, the community of faith, and as we've seen God working from that, we go back to our homes, to our families, to our places of work. And we have struggles there. We have challenges there. We have hurdles that we have to clear in our own personal lives. And we can take the success, the witness of how God has worked through the local congregation, and let it click in our mind that, yes, God can work through my own life as well. I can face this challenge, I can face this difficulty, I can face this hurdle and get over it, because God works through me individually as He works through a community of faith as well. And we celebrate those successful triumphs of faith within our lives during our birthdays, when we look back over the years, during graduation of children, as we've seen how we've raised them, during homecomings, such as today for me. Coming home, thinking about all that has transpired since I've left here in the last 10 years, and how God has been working through me, and giving thanks to God for that. It's a celebration of what we're together through here as a local congregation and as individuals of faith. And God be with you until we meet again. Amen.
I want to say this before I go any further. It seems to me that all of us have a great deal of pride in what Scott Shreve has done and said, and the fact that he's present here with us this morning. And Scott, I want you to know that I did not make a mistake when I made that telephone call, and I didn't think so then, and I know so now. But I think that there are some of you who may not know all of Scott's family. I would like, first of all, to ask Scott's wife, Marjorie, if she would stand. And then, so you're not alone very long, Marjorie, we'll ask Tony, Scott's mother, and Bob to stand along with her. We know you people share great pride, and we share that with